Hey folks, this is Scott at the XFed Homestead. Well, winter is almost at the end. It'll be spring soon, although there's still quite a bit of snow on the ground around here. We had about a foot of snow a while ago, and we've had a little bit of heat lately, up into the 30s and 40s. So a lot of it melted, and I was real happy that a lot of the ice that was just sheeting my driveway has finally melted away. But that doesn't mean that snow isn't going to come again in another week or two. We've had snowstorms in March, and that's for sure. So I'll have to be ready for snow just in case. And during the last snowstorm, I worked my snowblower a little hard, I guess, and I started hearing some bumping coming out of it. And it turned out when I took it apart that the friction disc was broken. And this is something that happens to snowblowers that you use a lot, maybe every 10 years or so. And so now I'm going to have to replace the friction disc. So let's take the snowblower. I got the snowblower here in my garage. I'm going to flip it up and take it apart and try to do some work on it. I'm not really well versed in snowblower mechanics, but I bought a friction disc and I'm going to give it a shot myself and see how it works. So stick with me and we'll get to work. Well, I brought the snowblower here inside so I could put some good light on the subject, and it'd be a little quieter and out of the wind so that I could be a little more comfortable while I worked. The first thing I need to do is to flip over the snowblower, and in order to do that you need to shut off the gas valve that allows gas to get to the engine so that you don't flood the engine. And so I'll do that and then flip it over on its front. Now the next thing you need to do is find a comfortable bucket to sit on. And once you've done that, you're going to have to start taking things apart. This is the belly pan right here, and it's got 6 screws in it, 2 up top and 2 on the sides. These ones on the sides are easier to take off if you take off the wheels. Now it's easy to take off the wheels because they simply have this little clip on them that goes on the end, and when you pry that off with pliers or a screwdriver, the wheels slide right off. Now the thing to be careful about with the wheels is there's a square little key in the keyway on the axle, and that helps keep the wheel in position, in the right position. So you got to be careful you don't lose that keyway. It can fall out. Now mine are fairly well greased up, but if they're upside down, they'll still fall out, so keep an eye on them. Once you take the ends off with the pliers, you can just slide the wheel right off. Now, I greased up my wheel very well a few years ago because I had an incident where I had to take off the wheels and they would not come off. It took me like a half hour or so to pry these wheels off, and I learned. I greased up the axle and you just saw how the wheels came off. So make sure you do something like that. Put some grease on there so that they slide off and the axles won't rust. These ones. Now that I've just taken all the wheels off, here's the belly pan. I already undid the screws here, so this will fall right off. And that's all there is to that. And now you can get a look at the inside. One of the things I want to mention is you need to stay organized while you're taking things apart, and take a bunch of pictures as you go. I like to use an egg carton to keep all the screws in. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. I keep all the screws that go together in each cell of the egg carton. Just helps me stay organized as I go. So now the wheels are off, the belly pan's off, and you can see the insides of the machine. Take a look here. So here's the inside of the mechanism. And you can see right here this is the friction disc that I want to replace. And you might be able to see a little gleam of metal there. That's because the rubber has worn off and it is worn out. Once we get it out of there, you'll be able to see easier. Now, the way the friction disc works is that this drive disc, once I press the engagement handle, will rise up to meet it, and then it will start to drive all of the other gears. There's a chain over here. This is the drive shaft right here. I mean the axle right here that will start to move once that's engaged. And the way that it works is that you make it slide across here. By changing the location of where the disc is, as it can slide back and forth. By changing the location of where it hits this drive disc, changes the speed. So you'll see, as I move the lever here, it changes the position. This is slow, and this is fast. And to engage it, I pull the other lever up here, and the drive disc goes up to engage the friction disc. And then everything starts moving. So when I was last plowing snow and I felt the skipping as things were driving, what I was feeling was this section of the disc that was slipping as it tried to engage with the drive wheel. And that's what gave me the clue that I needed a new friction disc. So let's slide this in here. Do another one over here. And that will just help protect our friction disc area and the drive disc down here especially. Because remember, we're taking this disc out and replacing it with a new one. So now I'm going to take some pictures and some video of where everything is, especially this fork right here to the right of the friction disc, because there are some parts that are going to fall out there. And I want to make sure I know where they go. So I'll take some good video and a couple of still pictures to make sure I know what I'm doing. Well, now that I've taken all my pictures, it's time to get to work. The first thing I need to do is remove this pin right here. Oh, that was easy. I'll put that in my egg carton so I don't lose it. All right, that was easier than I thought it would be. Now it's going to get a little harder. We got to come over to the side of the machine here, and right here are some bearings that hold in that arm that captures the friction disc. Put those in my egg crate. This bearing will come off right there. And that's all there is to that. That holds the shaft, which holds the friction disc, and that's what we want to take out. Now that I loosened up that one bearing, I'll loosen up the other one on the other end so that I can slide that arm out one end and slip the friction disc off the other end. At least that's the plan. So let's take off that other one. Well, now things are going to get messy. I'm going to have to get in there and get that arm out of there along with the friction disc. And like I said, there's a lot of grease in there, so I think it's time. I got to throw on the old crime scene gloves and get my hands dirty. Now I'll see if I can work around the camera and get this done. At the right end of the arm, you can't really see it, is a sprocket that holds on to this chain right here. That may have to come out. There, it's out, and now it's loose. I just have to see if I can slip this gear off the end. There we are. That's it. That's the gear that runs the chain. So let's put that to the side. So now we can take the right hand side of that arm and stick it through the hole on the right hand side. See how it slides back and forth? I don't know if you can see that. There, it's sliding back and forth now. And I'll make it go out the hole on the right hand side, and we'll see if we can slide off the wheel. And there it is. That's the sound of success. I dropped the arm, but now this friction disc is loose and I can take it out. This piece was at the bottom of the forks. We'll put that in our egg carton as well. And I move the forks over, so now there's our disc. So if we look at it, you can see the damage. Look at that. So all that rubber broke right off and caused the skipping that I was feeling the last time I used the snowblower. So now that everything's apart, let me show you some of the things that happened here. Here's the arm that we took off. That bell-like sound of this hitting the ground that I said was the sweet sound of success. That spline at the end of that goes on this little cog. There, you can see that. Goes on that cog there, which drives the chain. So that's all there is to that. I'm going to put some anti-seize on here to make sure it comes off easily, and grease that up well when it goes back. Here is our friction disc, and if you look right here, you can see where it is worn out, and that was the section that was bumping when I was trying to use it previously. It gave me the clue that it was worn. This piece right here holds the forks that shift it to make it go faster or slower. And you can see they're just a little bit worn. It's not damaged, they're just a little worn from the forks right there. So I ordered a new friction disc that's supposed to fit this. And you look in the packaging here. You're seeing it for the first time as I'm seeing it. From here, there we go. So essentially the same thing, the same holes. They're going to get mounted to this. So I'll take the disc off. It looks like it has 3 Torx head screws in it that I have in my drill driver that I'm going to take it off. So when I take this off, I'm going to loosen them up and hold on to it tight, because this thing could probably fly out of my hand. You can feel the pull. There we go. So So we take that one off and put this one on. Looks like this has a little cardboard component. My understanding is that this green ring is for another type of snowblower. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't have a lot of knowledge about that. The interesting thing to note is, look how thick the rubber is on the new one compared to the old one. They're designed to wear out eventually, but that's a lot of rubber. So this really needed to be replaced. Hey folks, Scott here, back in the garage. It is the next day. I actually got a call after I had finished up putting together the friction disc, and it was from my buddy Roger, who said he was over at Haskell's barn with Peter. And what the project that's going on over there is the restoration of a 1946 delivery truck. It's a monstrous thing. It's a giant dually. And Peter has been working on it previously with Dan, now with Roger, has been working on it to get it back into shape. And they are going to turn it into a pizza wagon. My part in the whole thing is to do a bunch of welding once they get done putting the cab of the truck back together. So I hope to show you more video in the future of that. You can see the truck. It's a beautiful truck, and getting more beautiful by the day. So that's a future video that may happen, but for now, let's get back to putting this thing together. I'm going to start with getting this inside the machine without getting any grease on it. And putting this back together is like a lot of things. I've got big hands, these are big components, and we're trying to get them into a relatively small space. So it's going to take some finagling. Okay, so right now you can see that the wheel is in there, the friction disc is in there, it's on the axle, and I just have to place the forks, the shifting forks, over this piece right here, the one just to the right of the friction disc that I'm moving there. Now, if you'll remember, there were two washers that went here where the forks are. And I'm going to put those washers on the top here of this spinny thing. I don't know exactly what that's called. On the top and on the bottom. And then I'm going to work the forks over it so that when I shift it, this friction disc can move to the right and left freely. Now, I can tell right now I have the camera between me and the snowblower. I'm going to move you guys out of the way. And now remember, I have to get the spline that's in there onto the sprocket that runs the chain, which is right here in my egg carton. But before I do that, I'm going to put a little bit of anti-slip paste onto the spline. So in years from now, should I want to get in here again and do something similar, that will come right off and I won't have to fight with it like I did with the wheels when I took them off a previous time. So I'm learning a little as I go, and I borrowed some of this anti-slip paste and I'm going to put it on that spline. There we go. I called this anti-slip, I should say. It's anti-seize. There There it is. So it does slip off after you use it. So I'll put some around there. That's all there is to it. And I'll get this back inside so that I can put it on the sprocket to run the chain that's inside. Well, I did a little bit of finagling and I got that sprocket on the arm and worked it into the chain. It took about 2 or 3 hands to really do it, but I managed it after a little while. And sometimes, from my experience, you got to play around with these things to make it work. But it looks like everything's in place, so now I can put the bearings on the ends. And these bearings, they look in pretty good shape, but I'm just going to add a little extra wheel bearing lubricant. So this is something I just had. I think this was my dad's. There's still 2/3 of a tub left. I guess it came in 1 pound increments. And I'm just gonna put some of this with my gloves, my gloved fingers on the wheel bearing and then put it right over here on the end of the arm. And I'll put that right on there, holding the other end, and that just goes right on there, and that will be held in place by its cover. But while I'm here, on this side there's a grease fitting, and while I have the wheels off, I'd like to hit that grease fitting as well. So I'll take care of the bearing on the other side, and then we'll put the covers on, and then I'll hit this while the wheels are off. There we go. There we go. I'll go back to the other side and put that grease in. I've already done the other grease fittings. There. Now it looks like I'm just about done, but as I'm looking at my egg carton full of parts, I see there's this small cotter pin that I had forgotten to put in, so another win for the egg carton. So I can see exactly where that goes, and the good thing is you can turn these gears over here so that that will face you. And I can see that hole right there. There we go. And you heard that lock into place. Now, that arm spins in there, and so it could make it difficult for you. But if that's the case, just get a wrench, a box wrench or a crescent wrench, and put it on that arm as it's 6-sided. So you can get something on there to hold it tight, and then you can put that cotter pin in. So the inside's taken care of. I'm going to add a little grease to the arm before I pull out my paper towel, and that way the inside will be nicely greased. And these cogs and gears over here, I'll add a little grease there too. That won't hurt at all. Now here's my grease. I took my gloves off earlier so that I could work the camera, but now I'll get them greasy again on this hand and just work it over the arms, especially where it's going to slide. And I want to make sure I stay away from the friction disc. So in order to make this slide, I'm going to go up here and shift it back and forth so those forks will move the discs over the arm and spread that grease. Spread that grease around. That seems to be working. Nice. Well, since my glove's already greased up, I will throw a little grease here on the axle, being careful not to knock out my splines, which are still here. I'll spread that around. And then I can put the wheels on and we can give this thing a test and see how it does. Well, that works great. Well, hey, this looks like another successful project done. And I've been wanting to take care of that, and I had to wait for the parts, and I'm glad we finally got it done. So I hope you learned something. I certainly learned a few things. Next time I try to do something like this or help somebody with their project on their snowblower, I'll know a lot more. Anyhow, I got to get the belly pan back on to button the thing up, put in a few more screws on each side, and we'll be good to go. So until next time, this is Scott at the XFed Homestead.